Welcome to Ballston, the quiet little giant of a place that has been reawakened by the big orange bee. Welcome to Ballston, where super minds meet. I found a little catchphrase that I'm going to steal from somewhere else, but it's born in Ballston, used everywhere. Welcome to Ballston, home of the Washington Capitals. The next big idea, Willows, DARPA, the Westin, Accenture, World of Beer, and on and on and on. And welcome to the second annual meeting of the Ballston Business Improvement District. We are honored and very privileged tonight to have with us a gentleman who I never met until tonight, but who I have always admired because he took his success in the private sector and is now serving in the public sector for us. Mark Warner was elected to the U.S. Senate in November 2008 and serves on the Senate Banking, Budget, Commerce, and Intelligence Committees. Senator Warner also is a leader in Congress in efforts to promote private sector innovation, like here, and to help our nation's small businesses and startup companies succeed. From 2002 to 2006, Senator Warner served as governor of Virginia, the great state of Virginia, where he worked in a bipartisan way to turn record budget deficits into a surplus. Governor Warner also focused on improving public education, expanding economic opportunity in every region of the state. He recruited 135,000 new jobs to Virginia during his 4-year term. When Governor Warner left office in 2006, Virginia was consistently recognized as the nation's best managed state, best state for business, and the state offering the best educational opportunities for its young people. Before entering public office, Senator Warner was an early investor in the cellular telephone business. Smart. He co-founded the company that became Nextel and ultimately made early investments in hundreds of startup technology companies that have created tens of thousands of private sector jobs. Senator Warner, his wife Lisa Collis, and their 3 daughters live in Alexandria, Virginia. So Senator Warner, we are having our challenge for the next great idea. How do we go from there? Senator Warner.
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you. Well, thank you, Brenda. Thank you for that introduction. It is great to be here in Ballston, here in Arlington. Hard for me to say that as an Alexandrian here in Arlington. Easier to get Democrats and Republicans sometimes to work together than Arlington and Alexandria. Congratulations to Tina and all of her team at BID for the great work that you've done, and it really is kind of remarkable what has happened in Ballston. I remember, I've lived in this area, seen Talmadge here, 35 years, and for a while actually lived in Ballston. When I was starting my business career, I had gone to law school, decided I would become an entrepreneur, went out and took my life savings and invested in a little startup company. It was an energy company, went to work for the company, helped the company go totally broke in 6 weeks. Went into real estate, failed at that in 6 months. And in my third venture was in the wireless business. And I'd gone to law school at Harvard, so all my law school friends were, working at big fancy law firms. And I was literally living out of my car and sleeping on my friends' couches. And there was a house here in Ballston that I stayed at most. And I'll always remember all my law school classmates going, "Warner, you are so crazy." This was, of course, 1982. "You are so crazy. Go get a real job. Who's going to want a car phone?" They're still billing in 6-minute increments. So it is, you guys have come a long, long way. And as Brenda said, what the next great idea is, it could be here. And what I thought that I would do tonight is give you a little bit of survey of the land of kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly in Congress. Try to make sure we can save some time for questions. Love to hear what's on your mind as well, because, one of the things, let's start with kind of probably the concept behind the bid and behind this business improvement district, Ballston Improvement District, is that as somebody who came out of the tech industry, and again, congratulations, what you've read all these different, including this great hotel, but the companies, the Virginia Tech, the other Marymount, the other educational institutions. I was over at DARPA just the other day, last week, with some wild stuff going on there. I think one of the things that you guys get more than probably most anybody in Virginia, or for that matter in the country, understand is that we live in a global economy. In an information age, things like time and distance don't make that much matter anymore. So more and more the question of where you want to be and who's going to be successful comes down to a competition between access for capital and access for talent. Everything else is to a degree fungible. The infrastructure is important, yes, but there are lots of places that have infrastructure. But talent and capital are really kind of where it's at. And I want to talk to both of those for a moment on the good side, and then we'll talk about some of the crazy stuff that's going on in Congress to kind of give you at least my flavor of it. On the question of access for capital, we in Northern Virginia have come a long way. I remember when I started started Nextel, started to help do a consolidation of the wireless industry, and then made a little money and started Columbia Capital, which is still, I think, the largest in telecom industry, at least mid-Atlantic venture capital fund. At that point, 25, almost 30 years ago, there was very little venture capital across Northern Virginia. Now, we rank pretty darn good on a regional basis. And again, Arlington and Alexandria, Greater Washington is a hub. But there's also a question, particularly post-financial crisis, of if you are one of these entrepreneurs and you've got that great next thing, and even post-crash, while things have gotten better business-wise, while the economy has recovered, the really early stage capital is still pretty hard to find. So one thing that is good news, and one thing that I think the bid could be the next big thing, and I hope Virginia could be the next big thing, is actually legislation that did get passed, bipartisan, called the Jobs Act, that does two things with it. One, it makes it easier to go public in terms of regulatory reform. That's maybe a little further down the line. Secondly, which is, I think, potentially transformative in terms of access to capital, it finally allows crowdfunding to be used for equity capital. Most of you probably understand crowdfunding, how you raise money over the internet. Now mostly used on a charitable basis. You think about the Kivas and the Kickstarters and others. But with this legislation, now you can raise equity capital. Huge amount of questions around this. It's taken the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, more than a year to try to get out the regulations. I keep trying to nudge them along to get these regulations out because this will be very important for an Arlington, for a Ballston. It will even be more important for a Martinsville or a Danville or other parts of the state that don't have any of the kind of access to capital that we've got up here. But the next big thing for Ballston might be trying to concentrate and trying to get some of these hosting sites, some of the sites that will end up being the curators for the kind of business deals that will come through these sites using crowdfunding as a venture capital or as an early stage capital source. Extraordinarily exciting and really opens up the same way that eBay did the trading markets. Who would have assumed 15 years ago that we would have literally billions of dollars in terms of trade opportunities and barter opportunities through an eBay? Now we could do the same thing for companies through actual direct equity fundraising. So good news, I think, on capital. On talent, there's also some good news. Today, we moved one step closer to passing in a major way an immigration bill in the Senate. I, for one, if we're going to compete for talent, we've got to change a very broken immigration system. And while most of the attention has been upon, all right, how do you tighten border security, or what is the path to legal status, whether you're undocumented, or path to citizenship, both very important. What we also do in this legislation that hasn't gotten as much attention, maybe this crowd realizes, but it hasn't gotten as much public attention, is we take dramatic steps forward in terms of recruiting and retaining high-skilled talent. 25% of the tech communities in Northern Virginia, at least one of the founders is a first-generation American. Matter of fact, if we had immigration policies in effect in the 90s that we do now, there would not be a Google. There might not have been an Intel. There would not have been as much of the tech community that we have here in this region because our immigration policies have gotten so restrictive. So we've got to fix that. And case in point is, I saw a couple folks from Virginia Tech here. Here's what is so crazy about our process right now is you get a PhD in electrical engineering from Virginia Tech and you happen to come from the Czech Republic or Brazil or India. Not only is it very difficult for you to stay and get that H-1B or start a business here, but what happens is, and I'd love to have more native-born Americans in those STEM fields, but we don't, at this point at least. And how do we continue to prime the pump and attract the best and brightest talent from around the world? We've got to change our immigration rules. And what is so completely crazy about not changing them at this point is that our competitor nations, not the Alexandrias or the DCs or the Marylands, but Canada, the UK, and Australia have dramatically changed their immigration rules in the last 5 years. So now somebody gets that PhD at Virginia Tech or UVA, and they simply move to Toronto. I mean, that is economic suicide unless we recognize how do we continue to attract that world-class talent. And again, I am very hopeful that we will get this passed. And it also does one other thing I want to talk on immigration, and that is, and another senator said this, but I thought it was a very interesting thing, and it's Lamar Alexander said it, so I'll give him credit, but I've been stealing it wildly in the last week or so in most of the talks. This debate about immigration is also a debate about our character. I look around this room, and again, you reflect the new face of Virginia, the new face of America. Enormous diverse backgrounds. And that is such, every politician, everybody says that's one of our strengths, but think about it for a minute. If I moved to China tomorrow, I could live the rest of my life there. I'd never be Chinese. If I moved to India, if I moved to Mumbai tomorrow, and I'm chair of the U.S.-India caucus, I'm proud of that, I'm never going to become Indian. If I moved to France, I'm never going to become French, no matter how bad my accent is. But it's only in America, for all our flaws, that you can come and accept our values, accept our principles, and become an American, not in multiple generations, but become an American in a relatively short period of time, and your kids and next kids and everyone else will be American as mom and apple pie. That is such a unique aspect that has constantly allowed this country to renew itself time and time again. And what's so frustrating about some of the debate on the floor of the Senate right now, that there seems to be some who, as we keep knocking down these objections to immigration reform, that seem to be looking backwards about our country's past instead of forward in terms of how America is going to stay that economic engine that the world desperately needs. And that, again, here in Virginia, we're blessed to do a little better than most, and Ballston does better than even Virginia, and Arlington. Ballston does even better than most of Arlington. So, we've got to get this right. And my hope is that over the coming, we'll get this out of the Senate with, I think, 67, 68 votes. Anything that gets more than 2/3 of the Senate in today's political environment is a giant step in the right direction. And hopefully we will then be able to convince and cajole and harass our friends in the House to actually pass something too, so we can get this thing in the rearview mirror. So on access to capital and access to talent, there are some good news things. Let's talk about some of the not so good news. I'll go ahead and get this one out of the way before we get to questions. Okay, Warner, what happened with NSF? I could give you the politician's answer. I have friends in Arlington, I have friends in Alexandria, and I stand with my friends. I won't give you that answer. The fact is that back in 2010, a letter from the whole congressional delegation sending something to the GAO saying, hey, we want NSF to stay here in Arlington, right here in Ballston. The challenge was that there was an unsolicited bid from Alexandria that came in, and again, I've talked to the GAO at one point. Once that bid came in, particularly since we were worried that actually the competition was going to come from Maryland, you couldn't say, well, don't make the taxpayer the best deal. and the process plays itself out. I think the Ballston will actually be able to hit this, go through this bump very quickly, and again, mentioning at DARPA the other day, they felt there was kind of no loss of synergy with some of the other research facilities that are in the community. Let's talk about something else that is probably on everybody's mind. Okay, you guys, what are you going to do about sequestration? This is one that we need to be worried about. Beyond the fact that as I mentioned, I was a business guy longer than I've been a politician. I can actually read a balance sheet. The most incredible thing is how we are running our government at this point. Would you ever run the largest enterprise in the world, the federal government, on 6- and 9-month continuing resolutions? Remember, this is stupidity. Sequestration was initially set up to be so stupid that no rational people would ever allow it to happen. Memo to Congress, don't set up a default that's so stupid thinking that you're going to be smart enough not to do it. And the problem is, while we've not seen the declines in the first 3 months, we're still simply kind of moving monies around with the expectation that this is not going to kind of continue. Because remember, we're only a little more than a quarter and a half into a 10-year process. And if we don't get this fixed, let me give you, again, some of the metrics. Domestic discretionary spending right now. Again, this may be one of the only audiences who would understand what that means. That is everything we spend on energy at the federal government, everything we spend on environment, everything we spend on law enforcement, but it also means everything we spend on education, infrastructure, and research and development on the domestic side. That's only 16 cents. Only 16 cents out of every federal dollar you send to Washington. If we go on the House plan, which includes sequestration and a little bit more, that 16 cents would go down to 4 cents over the next 12-year period. Again, I could care less whether you're a Democrat or Republican, but most of you, if you're here, probably have got some business background. Would you ever invest in a business that spent less than 5% of its revenues training and equipping its workforce, investing in plant and equipment, which for a nation is your infrastructure, and staying ahead of the competition, which is research and development? That is a fundamentally flawed business plan. How did we get here? Well, we're now at $17 trillion in debt. We go up by $4 billion a night. And, whose fault is it? Democrats' fault, Republicans' fault, Obama's fault, Bush's fault. The fact is, over the last 75 years, 70 of those years, we've run an annual deficit. How did it get so much worse? Again, from a business standpoint, it's fairly easy to understand. And I won't spend all the time on this, but I think it is remarkable that most folks kind of argue about this on politics when really it's a fairly easy business proposition. Here's what America did in its last 13 years. On the revenue side, we cut taxes on a 10-year basis, our revenues, by $4.5 trillion. Not as if the 90s we didn't do pretty well with that revenue stream, but we cut it dramatically. The remarkable thing is we could have actually gotten away with cutting taxes that much, and nobody likes taxes. I don't like taxes. But I also don't like borrow and spend as a long-term financial plan. But here's what we did. We cut revenues so dramatically, but we did 5 things on the spend side that makes this just plain unsustainable. Post 9/11, we doubled defense spending. Much of that needed, but some of it not sustainable. Second, we created a whole new category of government spending called Homeland Security. Cost a lot of money to take your shoes off at the airport. Third thing we did was, and this was unprecedented, we went to war not once but twice in Iraq and Afghanistan, 100% on the credit card. America's gone to war many times, but every other war we've ever fought in, there's been some revenue stream to pay for part of it. Fourth thing we did, and this was again, probably many of us in this room supported it when we did it. We said, we looked at our parents and grandparents and said, price of drugs, prescription drugs is going up. So we're going to create a new entitlement, Medicare Part D, good program. Been actually more efficient than we thought. We didn't pay a dime for it. And I say this partially glibly, but not entirely without some truth to it, the real problem, it's not the politicians, it's the doctors, because they're doing such a good job. Average life expectancy is now 80 in America. That's a blessing. The problem with it is, though, And here's your one quiz question you're going to have for tonight. Do you know who originally set 65 as a retirement age? Bismarck. I knew I had a smart group here. Bismarck set 65 as a retirement age in 1872 for Germany. He said, you get there, we're going to give you a check because average life expectancy was 57. Perfect politician promise. You outlive the actuarial tables, we'll give you a check. You know, now it's 80, and if you're a healthy woman at age 20, it's 100. That is a blessing. That is a great evidence of medical science. It also means the math doesn't work. When I was a kid, 16 people working for every one person on Medicare and Social Security. Today it's 3. In 15 years it'll be 2. Medicare and Social Security need to be preserved. So we're going to have to make some changes. So if we don't want stupidity on steroids of sequestration, if we don't want a business plan that would cut us to less than 5% of our revenues, investing in the things that will be how this country stays ahead, we're going to have more revenues and some changes to the entitlement programs. There is no other way. The Republicans are going to have to give on revenues. The Democrats are going to have to give on entitlements. The alternative is a disastrous business plan for our country, and would not be the next best thing for Ballston. My hope is that we'll get that done. You know, it's kind of strange where I work. I work in the only place maybe in America where being a gang member is a good thing. And I started the gang of 6. There's a gang of 8 with immigration. And I'll close and take some questions. You know, the main thing is, you know, this, even living here, because many of you are government contractors, many of you are in real estate, you know, it can get frustrating watching what goes on across the river. I can assure you it's even more frustrating at times working there. But, you know, I'd make 3 asks to you before, you know, if you believe, if any of what I've said to you tonight has made sense and resonated in terms of how we make sure Ballston, Arlington, Virginia, America does well. Because we need your involvement. We need your investment. It cannot just be, you know, I'm going to take care of my community. So the asks, and these are bipartisan, you know, or nonpartisan asks. There are 3 things. 1, don't vote for anybody who signs one of these stupid pledges. I don't care if the pledge is never raise taxes or never touch Social Security. You hire people that have got one hand tied behind their back to go up and try to make their judgments. You're going to get the government you deserve. Second, recognize that both Fox and MSNBC don't tell the truth. My gosh, I hear more people just parrot back some of these talking heads from TV, and it's like, you know, do not believe this stuff that comes over. You know, where is Walter Cronkite when we need him? Third thing is, and this is a little harder. You know, we got to get out of our. If you're in this effort, this should maybe not be as hard as it would be for many, because many of you are entrepreneurs, many of you are developers of real estate. That has to be entrepreneurial. You know, if we're going to try to get this country back on the right path, help Ballston continue on the right path, we got to get out of our own personal comfort zones. Yeah. And that means, you know, if you happen to be a Democrat in this room, go find a Republican who's willing to do additional revenues and support them. If you're a Republican in this room, go find a Democrat who's willing to do meaningful entitlement reform and support them. Until we reinforce the kind of elected officials who we say we want, and I'm a Democrat, proud to be a Democrat, but I'm more importantly a Virginian and American. Until we can occasionally check our red shirt and blue shirts and actually get these problems solved, then we're not going to have the kind of enormously optimistic future that I believe we'll have. And I stay an optimist. This is a challenging job. You know, I remember 25 years ago when we went through a decline and we looked like we had large deficits in the, you know, it was late 80s, large deficits. We questioned where our jobs were going to come from. There was an emerging Asian nation that was going to eat our lunch. It was Japan at that point. And then American innovation took off in the 90s, and we had growth beyond anybody's potential. A lot of that, again, came out of Northern Virginia tech community and other things that some of you were part of, and many of you will be part of the next generation of. When I do get frustrated, I always fall back on one thing. This will be the last thing before we take questions. I fall back on a great quote of Winston Churchill. Most everybody's old enough to remember Churchill. He was Prime Minister of Britain during World War II. It was early in the war. The Nazis had conquered all of Europe. There was a question about what the United States was going to do. Churchill, in an effort to get up and try to rally the people of Britain, was giving this speech, and he said, "You can always count on the Americans to do the right thing after they've tried everything else." Well, I kind of feel like in our politics we're at that moment. It's time for us to all to do the right thing, whether that is do the right thing in your community, whether that's do the right thing at the state level, whether that's doing the right thing in your business and your family. And it sure as heck is for us to do the right thing in our politics. We do that, this country's future is going to be bright, Virginia's future is going to be bright, and Ballston's future is going to be bright. Thank you all very much. I'd be happy to take some questions.
Hello?
Question, comment, suggestion?
Anyone? We have a question right here.
Hi there, Senator. My name is Jennifer Paquette. I'm the president of the Arlington JCs. We are the Young Professionals branch of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And I actually am originally from Connecticut like you are, but now call Virginia home. Started a small business here about a year and a half ago, literally in the building next door.
Cool.
I'm a resident here. My question really is that, and I love Ballston Bid. The JCs are partnering with Ballston Bid in many different projects, but I think the one thing, I'm marrying a Hokie who's a software developer, and I'm sitting next to two sort of startup guys. And the one thing about Virginia is that, we look to DC, a lot of people are attracted to what DC is doing, and I'm not saying I don't love DC, of course, I lived there for a little while, but now call this home. What is it, you talked about the talent and you talked about sequestration, and I think those two things go hand in hand. And by that I mean, at some point, government is probably going to shrink a little bit. There are a lot of people here who are going to be affected by that. A lot of people have a lot of talent. How do we keep that talent here, especially with this entire sort of startup community, this entire sort of small business boom that we're trying to create in this area? And I am contributing to that with my own company. How do we keep those people here? And is it a government that can help with that? Is it the community that can help with that? How do we sort of build on what's happening?
Well,
so, thank you.
Good question, Jennifer. I think that there's public sector things and private sector things. Ultimately, when you're young and until you have those kids, you're gonna want to live in a cool place. At some point, you're gonna want good schools. We score very high. Arlington, Alexandria, obviously Fairfax, we score very high. It becomes an attraction point. You've got to have an energy, particularly, and again, Ballston has done a good job in this, Clarendon as well. You want to have a cool scene. And again, I remember when, Arlington was pretty sleepy. There wasn't much past, 9 or 10 o'clock. You guys have changed that dramatically. Yes, government is going to get smaller. It should get smaller. But what we don't want to do, though, and this is kind of the stupidity on steroids point, where, at NIH, for example, we're going to bring somebody in tomorrow that's going to talk to a member of the Senate, is going to explain, Francis Collins, who runs NIH, he's going to talk about the fact with sequestration out there, we have 5-year cancer studies where we've done the first 4 years, but have not done the 5th year, and you have to flush the research from the first 4 years if you don't get this avoided. And increasingly, we've seen a dramatic shift. I remember there was great companies like the Bell Labs and IBMs and others who did massive research when I was growing up. That's all been almost completely, not completely, but much of it transferred to the public sector side. So we don't have that public investment at the state level and the federal level into our universities. I'm also proud to be the governor who got the Hokies into the ACC, which earns me a lot of votes from, you're the only blankety-blank Democrat, but I'm all going to vote for you because you did that. We've got to do that. Where we can take advantage, and I think about this in my own industry, the wireless industry grew up here in many ways because the FCC was here. Even in a smaller government footprint, there's going to be spin-off industries. Cyber, I'm on the Intel committee. I'd like to tell you a bunch of stuff, but then I'd have to eliminate you. But cyber is going to be a huge, huge growth area. No one is better positioned than this region to take advantage of cyber. We've been talking about the life sciences for years. We still have, you get a little bit further up towards Maryland and Johns Hopkins, they've got more, but we've still got the beginnings of a life science industry here in Northern Virginia. I still think there's going to be increasingly advanced spin-offs coming out of DARPA are going to be hugely. So what we need to do is, I think, keep the buzz, These kind of things are important beyond just the kind of networking. We need to fix almost in a disproportionate way, because our region is going to be tied, whether we like it or not, to public sector spending. So hire people who are rational. I don't care what party. Hire people who are rational, who will allow us to kind of plan. Even at smaller government, you can get there if you can plan for it. Make the choices as well on what is kind of your seed corn: education, infrastructure, R&D. And try as well to, I think, from this area, think about those sectors that and be proactive on them. And that's some of the stuff that we've not done as well here. I would argue, I want to be very candid, because we've kind of, particularly the government contracting sources, have been adept at moving from one area to another. They were defense, then they were homeland security, and now they're cyber and intel. And we've not really had an entrepreneurial culture. That's still kind of getting the secret sauce down right. I think that's coming with the kind of things that are happening here. I think crowdfunding can help boost that. That again, if we could have more of that activity here. I'm proud of the fact that I've hosted a couple seminars on that. We can bring lots of expertise to the table on that. But those are some of the things I would do. Sorry for the long answer. I'm going to let this gentleman pick the questionnaires.
Hi, Mark. Todd Moore, TM Soft, local business owner here in Ballston, in the mobile app space.
Right.
And I've been fortunate enough to build a few apps and be able to hire employees that have had millions of downloads. So the business was doing great, and I was waking up every morning trying to come up with the next great idea. Lately, I'm learning a lot about patents and things of that matter, because I'm being sued by a patent troll out of the East District, state of Texas. I would much rather wake up and work on the next big idea and hire new employees, but I'm spending so much time trying to defend the ideas I've already created. My question to you is, what do you think about the SHIELD Act? Do you see it getting passed? And I hear, well, from my lawyer mainly, that it'll be so watered down if it does get passed that it won't change anything. I would like to see that change, and I'm just wondering.
Let me. Thank you, Todd. One is, I feel your pain. I had a company, great software billing company, got public. Almost 1,000 employees got completely taken down by a patent troll. So I am absolutely there. And what is interesting is, it used to be big guy, small guy. Some of the patent trolls would kind of basically say they're defending the little guys. That isn't the case anymore. It is startup. This has become so pervasive that it is startups who are feeling the pain as much. 3 is, I think we also have this massive misallocation of capital going on as large enterprises go out and simply buy huge patent portfolios, whether for offensive or defensive position. That's just not the right allocation of capital. So, whether it's SHIELD Act or some other form of next round of patent reform, I think we're going to need to be pretty darn aggressive about it. We passed something a couple years ago, the kind of first to file, that we thought would slow some of this. It hasn't done enough. So, I've got some of the particulars of SHIELD law. I don't want to weigh in on that one particular, but I can assure you that, I'm going to be part of whatever gang is involved in trying to get this patent reform. This just makes enormous sense for our country and for an entrepreneurial culture. Take a couple more. Somebody want to pick?
Good evening, Senator Warner.
Yes.
I'm back here.
Where? Oh, there you are. Okay.
Thank you for being here. I do want to ask you about today's Supreme Court ruling on ending DOMA and the Defense of Marriage Act, and how that will affect business. We live in it's been a very conservative state, the last administration here. And if I were a big multinational company and I have a human resource department and I'm trying to attract all talent, but people would have to give up their federal benefits that they are just now privy to in the states lucky enough to have legalized same-sex marriage. What will happen with Virginia in its current state?
Great.
Because I can't see anybody making, if we're looking at this as as a business plan. Any family has a business plan, and to give up the potential of federal benefits to move to Virginia seems like a fool's errand.
Yeah, I agree. I support marriage equality. I thought the DOMA decision was a good one. And, you know, and it's one, I think, frankly, where the people have moved a lot faster than politicians. I remember it was viewed as radical in 2005 when I finally put in place, for the first time ever in Virginia, just a non-discrimination statute that immediately later, after Tim was governor, got taken away because it was couldn't pass it through the legislature. So I am concerned. You know, how are we going to attract the kind of young, talented entrepreneurs who want to live in a, you know, not a Republican Democrat place, but a future past, you know, they want to live in a progressive place. And you can be a progressive Republican, progressive Democrat. This doesn't come with a political connotation. So, you know, one of the things we can do, you hire the whole state house and the governor this year. Vote.
Mark, I agree also on the, I agree on the potential for the crowdfunding. I would ask maybe a two-part update. One, we have a new director. Is that new director as committed? And two, when will it come out of the group?
You know, you asked me this the last time, and I didn't. I had a kind of a punt answer, and I've still got a punt answer. The new SEC commissioner, head commissioner is Mary Jo White. During her in my private meetings with her and my public meetings with her, I pressed her significantly on this. Because let's face it, there are going to be mistakes made in crowdfunding. There are going to be people that are going to get ripped off. What is different from crowdfunding, from the old telephone boiler room operations that used to try to raise money that way, is the ability of the internet to self-police and find out who's doing stuff wrong, and while maybe not physically taking them down, be able to curate in a way that lets that information out, I think will be, you know, much quicker. So I think what I've been trying to encourage the SEC is, you got to take a little risk on this. You're not going to get 100% right. And they nod, and we still don't have regulations. And so what I promised you, so I don't have you ask this question the next time I see you 6 weeks from now, is, you know, I think we just a week or two sent another letter there. I will call and, you know, we'll make sure we try to get it back out. We need to keep the pressure on. Let me take 2 or 3 more, and then I'll get out of your hair. Yeah, one of y'all back there. Whoever's got the mic.
Oh, cool. Thank you so much, Senator Warner. My name's Edward Ridgely. I'm actually one of the contestants for Ballston bid. So,
great.
Really appreciate you coming out here. Thank you. I think the question that was just asked, or the two before that, were really relevant, specifically with the Supreme Court rulings today. Kind of curious, with the internet and how it's shaped, it doesn't seem like there are any protective rights in the Constitution in the same way there is for the printing press. And yet, right now, with the federal government, a lot of millennials are really focused on privacy and how the government kind of interfaces with the private sector. I was wondering if you could touch where the vertex on that is, and especially for young entrepreneurs, how they don't have to fear maybe the bullying of other forces intervening.
Yeah, wow. So much for easy questions. You know, if I was going to add areas, wherever Jennifer is, unless she's, you know, another sector that I would say that we are, by just our position, geoposition, could be the world leaders in, is big data. Part of what we're talking about here with some of these issues, we couldn't even have this effect, couldn't even have this potential a decade plus ago because we didn't have these massive quantities of data. I'm not sure, I think the millennials are actually the data at least I've seen, much more split. People either feel very strongly about privacy protections, or at least what I've seen information is that the majority, and fairly large majority, actually don't have as much expectation of privacy. Again, that's just the polling data, it may be wrong. I can tell you, being on the Intel committee, that you know, Snowden's revelations have changed some of the actions of the bad guys already, to our detriment. I can tell you as well, without getting into specifics, and this has been publicly said, you know, that the 50-plus items, actions, where bad guys were doing stuff that were stopped by some of these activities. They're real. The bad guys were real, and they were taken down was real. I think this is an area that, we ought to have a full-fledged debate on. And I think the best way we can have that full-fledged debate is what the president has said by saying we ought to go ahead and, as much as possible, declassify a lot of this stuff so you can make the judgment. And I am, quite honestly, in a partially weird position because I don't know what, trying to figure this out about, I've only been on the Intel committee for a year and a half. What you say, what you don't say is, especially when 80% of what you hear is you actually read the New York Times the next day, so you don't want to pre-jump that. But I think this is a healthy debate that's long overdue. And I am, on one level, not satisfied with my answer I'm giving you, but on the other hand, hopefully honest enough to at least acknowledge that this needs some pushback. I'm going to want your views when you see more and can make more of an independent judgment. Because on things like the telecom companies, who holds the data? Do you really want the telcos to hold it? Do you want the government to hold it? Will there be more access on the telco side? These on some of the big data, just raw telephone numbers. So, but it's going to be a important debate that particularly I think this community needs to weigh in on. I think from a parochial economic standpoint, because this is going to generate a lot, again, we should have the more direct beneficiary of this because there's going to be, whether it is, who's going to sort and communicate and translate, a lot of that will be, I think, by default, is done already in the region, and I think more and more we need to figure out how some of the more entrepreneurial ventures can get a piece of that business. The DoD contracting and access for small entrepreneurs and small businesses is tough. The IC communities is even more opaque, and that's something I'd like to try to see if I could open up a bit. Let me take two more, and then I know you've got some more program.
Hi, Senator Warner. I'm Carlos Villamar. I have a small IP law firm in Fairfax County, and I gave a talk at the IEEE on the American Invents Act, and I really think it was sort of the death nail to the small inventor startup community. It was highly lobbied by 10 of probably the biggest corporations in the world. I think around $800 million were spent lobbying on both sides of the aisle. Very little representation from small inventors and startups. And are we willing to take a look at that legislation and see how it impacts the community that I serve? I was very saddened when it passed, and I think it's something that is not going to help the people that I help.
The patent bill from 3 years ago, yeah. I would be more than happy to. That's not the kind of sense I had, and particularly in terms of the numbers spent. But one of the things that we don't do near enough of, because we spend all our time, or way too much time, actually doing kind of shooting at each other politically, is from legislation standpoint and from regulatory standpoint. And I particularly say this as somebody who's been a business guy, an entrepreneur. I believe in the role of regulations, but at some point there's no incentive to actually get rid of any regulations. We never do any retrospective look-backs. One of the things that I've got legislation in now that would start to put in process something to do this regulatory look-back process. It's mostly been on regulatory, not on legislation, but let me take a look at the American Invents.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
and get me some information.
I'd love to, thanks.
Yeah, because again, remember, well, I may take one more and then I'll close out and let you guys go to the next part of your program. Who's got the last question?
Yeah, my name is Dave.
Let me also warn you for future politicians in the room, it's always the last question that kills you. So, it's just
My name's Dave. I'm also a finalist in the challenge here in Ballston. My startup is called Impact Hub, and we help growing organizations outsource more responsibly by matching them with service providers who hire disadvantaged youth and women. So my question to you, actually, I just want to follow up. You were earlier speaking about the highly educated foreigners who have maybe just graduated and now they move to Toronto because I guess we don't have an H-1B visa for them here. And looking at the legislation that's currently under review, it seems that an organization with more than 15% of its workforce with H-1B visas is actually going to be really hurt by that. They're not going to be able to hire really more than 15% workers out of their workforce. So I'm just curious, how do you think the marketplace is going to respond to that?
Didn't I tell you? And first of all, good job, David, too, is at getting out the your mini pitch on your venture before you just. And by the way, when we put in, what we do is we bump up the H-1B number, raw number. 2, we create a new STEM visa, but this is not for undergraduate STEMs, because we have a lot of Americans graduating from STEM programs. This is for master's and PhD level. And 3, we create a new initiative so that if you happen to be, particularly if you're here on an H-1B, and you want to become an entrepreneur, we're going to create a new category of kind of an entrepreneur visa, which is, I think, particularly important, so that if you can raise some money, hire some Americans, it makes sense. In terms of the H-1B at the 15% cap, it's not a hard cap. It's a as you know, it simply puts a higher price on those additional visas. You can still go after them. And quite honestly, I think that was a bit of a compromise because we wanted to try to bump up the H-1B overall number. And quite honestly, there are some outsourced companies that are scamming the system, that move folks back, and I say this as proud chair of the U.S.-India Caucus and supportive of, these exchanges. But there are companies that have abused this system to really end up doing it in a way that says, okay, how do I arbitrage the price point and move people back and forth in a way that is not fair game? So my hope will be, we get this legislation passed. What we need to do on all of these things is have the ability, and I'll make my final comments now, have the ability, whether it's legislation or anything else, to come back and look at things. And I was a big part of the Dodd-Frank legislation, the first 2 titles. I can give you 50 different things in Dodd-Frank that are wrong. Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, disruptive legislation, not as good or as bad as people have said. I can give you 50 things in Obamacare that, need to be changed. The problem has been, and what is different about America or about the legislative process now and why you guys gotta have your voices heard, is that in the past what would happen, Congress is in certain ways more dysfunctional now than it's ever been, but Congress has never been good at getting it right the first time. When you're doing something disruptive, anybody here that's an entrepreneur, I've never met an entrepreneur that's ever met his business plan or her business plan. What we have to do is adjust as circumstances adjust. So if you go back on any major piece of legislation, you pass it, and 2 or 3 years later, you come back with a fix-it bill. We now have a political system that says, okay, we don't, the Senate, where there's still things that somewhat get done bipartisanly. We got a House that says, no, we don't want to fix it. Let me just pass the repeal of Obamacare for the 41st time. I got to tell them, it ain't going to get repealed. So let's fix it. And, that is one of the challenges we've got right now. We've got to, one of the things people often ask me is, what was the difference between being an entrepreneur and being in politics? Being an entrepreneur, being a business guy, I had to put out a product. I had to find a customer. And I got measured in a very tangible way. Politics may be the only business I've ever seen where you can make your whole career simply running down your competition and never putting out a good product, and that be viewed as a successful outcome. I just simply said what's wrong with your business and never put out anything on my own, I wouldn't be in business very long. And that's where we need to kind of bring back, I don't want to keep beating the same message, but it is, if I leave you with nothing else other than the fact that you have done a remarkable job here in Ballston to make it a very cool place, is that we've got to hire people at every level, from your local community to your state to your country, that are going to be about getting stuff done. It doesn't mean you can't disagree, but you should be able to disagree without questioning each other's patriotism, morality, faith. And again, it kind of comes back to what our country's been all about. There are tons of countries where based upon your faith, based upon your race, based upon whatever, that was where you were stuck. The genius of America has always been, we can't guarantee you success, but we sure as hell ought to be able to guarantee you a fair shot. And in this, we set up rules of the road that aren't going to be too screwed up one way or the other, and that's going to end up helping everybody. And that's, we're at a moment, again, where we got to get it right. There is no God-given right that America is going to be the leading preeminent economic power in the 21st century the way we were in the 20th. Billion Indians, billion Chinese, billion folks in Africa saying, no, we want our piece of the pie. Nothing wrong with that. But I can sure as heck say this is, I think they will be better if we still do well. Not us versus them. I think we do better. And for all of our flaws, without American leadership, and going back to your question over here on all these issues, around some of the big data issues, or Lord knows we didn't even get to foreign policy, as much as we sometimes mess up, if we're not in the boat rowing, and I say this respectfully to our European friends, it's not like the Europeans have pulled off a lot of stuff to fix the Middle East, or fix this, or fix that. So we have to, I hope, play this essential role. And, for you all, I'd say I wish you all well as entrepreneurs. But be an entrepreneur in terms of how we fix our country. Be an entrepreneur to tell me, if we got this big data thing wrong and we have to figure out a way to rebalance privacy in a knowledge-based economy that has real bad guys using tools that are very, very scary, help us figure it out. If we got trolls on one side but first to file was not right, don't just complain, give me some suggestions. I'm still an entrepreneur more than I am a political guy. I'm willing to piss off both sides. And what I ask of you, again, is what I said earlier. Don't hire people who sign stupid pledges. Realize that both sides don't tell the whole truth. And 3, have a little political courage yourself. And if that doesn't work, remember Churchill. Thank you all very much. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Warner. Okay, I'll be a transition to Part B. In a moment, I'm going to call up to the podium Tina Leone, the CEO of our organization. But before that, I just want to take a moment to thank 4 of the most amazing people that have done for you all in Ballston everything you see before you and everything that Ballston has become over the last 2 years, which is quite amazing, sorry. And that is our staff of the bid. If you would stand up, Tina Leone, Allie Kraft, Samantha Baker, and Catherine is back there. And tonight, as I finish my term as president of the board of the bid, I just want to tell you that I love you all. And Tina, you've become a really close friend, and they're great, and they're going to bring Ballston to even a higher height than it is now, and we will need your help. So Tina Leone, come on up.
Thank you, Brenda. We're just going to do a little move for our presentation. Yes, I will do that. Thank you. So I want to welcome you all here tonight. Thank you for spending your evening with us. We know it's a busy season, and there's so many things going on, so we're really honored that you chose to spend this evening with us. I will not be offended if you want to go out and get a cocktail and come back in. The bar is still open, so that's definitely open for you tonight. We've had a very exciting year, and we all 4 of us really love what we're doing here. We set out a big schedule for ourselves. We were a little ambitious, and I think we've really surpassed even our own expectations for this year. So we're going to share some of our accomplishments with you, meaning from the staff and the board, the whole bid. And then we're going to give you a glimpse of some of the things that we're working on for the future. So at this time last year, we were still a relatively new bid. I had only been on for about 6 months, and the other staff was very new. We had been working more or less behind the scenes on things, getting the organization organized and working on the office and things like that, getting all the systems in place. But one of the critical things that we did work on was our strategic plan with our board of directors. And there are two major parts to that strategic plan, our marketing and branding program and our placemaking program. So we set the stage for the things that we needed to work on over the next year. So we felt both of these areas are extremely important and deserved much of our attention. But we felt that the branding aspect of Ballston needed to have our laser focus. Ballston has a wonderful character. There are some amazing things that happen here, but people didn't really know about it, or the brand really wasn't out there. So we really wanted to authenticate that, do some research, talk to our community about what do you think about Ballston? So we went out to the community and we did some research. We talked to our residents, we talked to our tenants, we talked to brokers, we talked to, of course, our bid members. We talked to people that didn't choose Ballston. We talked to our staff in the government. We talked to AED. We talked to young people. We talked to some people that are a little older and more experienced as well. And so we got some great feedback from them. And really, we developed this brand around what is already here in Ballston, what Ballston is already about. So when we finished that work, we were already well into November. And that's really not the best time to try and launch this brand, coming with Thanksgiving and the holidays coming up and the New Year's. So we said, okay, we're going to wait till January to bring this out to the world, but what can we do to get people excited about the brand, to get people to know that they have a bid? I mean, a lot of people didn't even know that we were here yet because we've been working behind the scenes. So we went out, we did some mini campaigns and some what we called teaser campaigns out in the community. We did cocktail napkins for our restaurants. We did some placemats in the Ballston Common Mall in the food court, teasing out the brand. We did some metro advertising. Then we also did our banner on the Ballston Mall, which is still up there now. And we decorated our skywalks here in Ballston. So those were just kind of little things for us to do to kind of get people excited and thinking about what was coming to Ballston. The year with a joint event with the Arlington Chamber as well. The new year, and now it's time for us to launch and to really live the brand. So we actually had a wonderful event, and before I do that, we should reveal what we developed some materials around the brand itself. If you don't know what this bee is all about, the orange, of course, is a testament to the Orange Line, the Metro. The rest of this bee really, for us, it denotes the connectedness, the creativity, the growth, the endless possibilities that are here in Ballston, the future, and taking things to the next level. We thought this really epitomized the type of people and activities that happen here in Ballston. So we're very proud of this brand. We want to thank the marketing committee for spearheading the whole effort. Thank the entire board of directors. Everyone really got involved in this. Everyone was really, really committed to making sure that we had the best brand possible. And then, of course, I want to thank Pappas Group, who actually did the creation of the brand. So Trish is here from Pappas Group, I believe. There she is. So thank you for that. So we're very proud of this brand. We're very pleased with what's come out. And we are continuing to, again, promote the brand here in Ballston. So after the brand launch, we continued our efforts to attract more attention to Ballston, get people to take a second look at us as a place where minds meet. And I got to give Brenda credit for the Superman campaign. She said this is where super minds meet. And this was a great campaign around that. We launched our website, which is also a very different looking website. Our navigation is where minds meet. So you have to do a little exploration there. We're going to continue our work on the website through fiscal year 14, expand the functionality of that as well. We've been very successful as far as gaining the attention of the press. We've been very fortunate that we get coverage. TV, radio, press has been wonderful. So we want to hopefully continue that with our programs and activities through next year. Our social media is also very important to us. Allie has been spearheading that whole effort for us. So she's going to continue to work those levels as well. She's probably tweeting right now, but she's got to watch what I'm doing too. So we'll continue to expand those efforts as well. Also, as we launched the brand, we announced the Ballston Launchpad Program and Challenge. And this is the challenge to find the next great idea. The genesis of this was, we are the home of the Washington Capitals. We are so lucky. We are so lucky, and we're so fortunate to have Mr. Ted Leonsis as a member of our business community. Well, he was here last year as our keynote speaker for our annual meeting, and he was really the inspiration for us. And he talked about the qualities of a great community, and one of those was to support entrepreneurship, to support idea makers, and help them bring their ideas to the next level. And we said, this is exactly the type of thing that we want to do in Ballston. And it fits right in with the minds that are already here and the creativity that's already here. So he actually was the inspiration for the challenge that we are conducting right now. So we said to ourselves, to bring people to Ballston, we want to have people take a second look at Ballston. We want to bring more minds here. How do we do that? We need to really cast a wide net to attract people to apply to the challenge and get people to get involved in the challenge. Maybe they're not a challenger, but they will get involved as partners or mentors or sponsors. So one of the things that we did was produce a trailer, and this was what we showed in movie theaters around the region.
What do these big ideas have in common? They were all conceived, born, developed, or funded right here in Ballston. To help the next big idea take root here in Ballston, the local business community has banded together to create
the Ballston Launchpad Challenge.
The goal is to shine a big bright light on undiscovered genius right here in Ballston.
And to provide the necessary support, coaching, networking,
and big thinking to make big things happen.
The person or group with the biggest idea will get an even bigger opportunity to share that big idea
with one of the biggest businessmen we know, who also happens to be a member of the Ballston business community,
Mr. Ted Leonsis.
We think they're great young entrepreneurs walking amongst us. All of you hopefully have a big idea.
Ballston is where minds meet.
And we can't wait to hear the next big idea.
Yours.
So we think that this was part of the reason that we received over 200 applications to this challenge. We were thrilled with that response, especially it being the first year that the challenge is in place. So 200 applications were then narrowed down by our panel of judges under several iterations to 10 contestants, 10 challengers. We then said, well, the judges had I got some phone calls and they said, well, I have a real favorite on this. I think that we should really include, this particular challenger. I said, okay, when I got a couple more phone calls, I said, okay, why not take the judge favorites and why not include them in this challenge? We have room for more. So we actually have 14 contestants and they represent a very diverse group. There's from many different industries. They all seem to have a technology, there's something similar there, that there's a technology use involved. But it's all very exciting. These individuals and companies, these are amazing, amazing people. And I wanted to acknowledge them tonight. And for those that are part of our challengers, could you just stand up for a moment and say, these are all winners right now to just be part of the challenge. So this group will continue to work with us over the next several months. There is a program in place. The program is actually open to the public as well, so we would love to have more of you involved. If you wanted to go through and develop your own ideas and bring those to the next level. The whole challenge will culminate in November, where they go before a panel of judges, and they'll be narrowed down to 3. And those 3 will then go before Mr. Ted Leonsis and a group of dignitaries, and they will select who has the next great idea. So we can't do this challenge without our sponsors. We want to thank all of our sponsors that are involved with this. This is a very exciting program, but it's also a program that was kind of outside of our normal budget. So we needed to have that support to get this done. And it really takes the entire community. We also need to thank our partners, our mentors, our judges, our instructors. As I said, it's people from within Ballston, but it's also people from the region that are involved. So it's been really a tremendous, very exciting effort. Of course, we also want to thank Mr. Ted Leonsis for lending his support and his time to this event as well. I'm sure he gets a lot of offers, and he could spend his time in a lot of places, but he chose to do it with us. And with that, we want to thank Joe DePriest here, the Chief Marketing Officer of Washington Capitals. Joe, without your support and help, this wouldn't happen, among many other things that we've worked on with you, so thank you so much, really. And there's one more person I want to thank on the challenge, and that is Bruce Mancinelli, the Executive Director of Inkspire. Yes. Bruce's company is based in Westin, but this tells you the breadth and the strength of this program is bringing the community together, not just within Ballston, but beyond. And Bruce and I have been working together to assess what these challengers need as far as mentorship. So he's been our core mentor. And we've not only met with them together, but Bruce keeps taking it on, and he's giving them advice and feedback, so you've been invaluable. Thank you so much, Bruce. Really appreciate your participation on the program. So I encourage you to go visit our website for more about information about the program and the challenge, and to see the community that's all involved here. It's really tremendous. So we're not satisfied with just working on one major program. We actually have Taste of Arlington is one of our very special events that we do every year. This is actually the second year that we've done Taste of Arlington, but last year we were relatively new, so we kind of kept things the status quo, just to check out how it's been done. And it's been done very well. We were very impressed with the event. Last year we actually attracted about 15,000 people, almost 40 restaurants, and we were very pleased with it. But again, we wanted to say, how can we move this festival to the next level for foodies? So this year we implemented a number of different changes, and you can see those on the screen, and the Bark Park and the VIP champagne tent, among other things, and giving just more people more room to breathe. So we were very thankful for the success of this program, and we have a little recap for you to take a view of. So we think it was a really fun, great, fabulous event for the community and for the restaurants involved. This year we were able to attract over 20,000 people, despite the rain, despite our metro stop being down, and the threat of maybe cicadas showing up. So we didn't get that, thank goodness. But we were very proud of that event. We were also very pleased. I want to thank all the sponsors again for Taste of Arlington. Again, it's very important to have their participation in this. The restaurants that participated as well, they did a great job this year. Actually, they set the bar pretty high for themselves because next year they have to provide this much food again. The portions were huge. And then, of course, we want to thank our volunteers that were involved this year. And we were very, very privileged to partner with Arlington Food Assistance Center. And Charlie Mang is here tonight. I don't know if he's still here. But we wanted to thank them for their help. And we were able to donate to them about $8,000 from the proceeds of the event for their help. So. So we encourage you to come on out for the 27th Taste of Arlington. Also, at Taste of Arlington, we unveiled some unusual new technology that we call an augmented reality statues. Even in Ballston, we take art to the next level. We know that the Washington, D.C. region loves their statues, so we put a little twist to that, a little technology twist to that. And showcase, we did this because we want to showcase the people that work in Ballston and that create these amazing innovations. And that's part of our next phase of this. But to launch them, we said, why not showcase the fame that we have here in Ballston and ask Mr. Leonsis to be a statue and maybe Alex Ovechkin from the Capitals. Of course, Joe, being as wonderful as he is, arranged that and then said, well, wait a minute, how about we do John Wall from the Wizards? And then we said, okay, maybe we should get DC United involved. So it really turned into a wonderful showcase of 4 digital statues, two of which are outside, the one of Ted and Alex. And then, so if you haven't tried out that technology, please do. We had a lot of fun creating these statues, and we have a little blurb for you to see on some bloopers.
I can't do that. I suck with any drills like that. I suck with those.
That's pretty good. I like that. That was pretty good.
Okay, one more time.
They were all literally really great sports about this, and they started to get into it. And once they realized that we were taping this is supposed to have fun with it, they started to relax, and they really enjoyed it. But it was a fun experience for us as well. And the technology that we created with this AR statue, we had to create this. It was not off the shelf. We're also going to use this technology to integrate that into our mobile application, which we are working on now. To bring to you in fiscal year 14. So we also, of course, move on. We've continued to do our farmers markets, and last year we were smart enough to bring in Fresh Farm Markets to partner with us and produce our market for us, operate it for us. We also had an arts market last year that took place on a Saturday, and we thought, the traffic's not so great on Saturday. Maybe we should try to bring this to the weekday. And so we ended up combining the markets on the first Thursdays of each month to create a mega market. So now the first Thursdays you have arts, you have food, you have music, you have food demonstrations and tastings to make it a much more vibrant and full event. So we hope you've been out to the market. If not, we encourage you to come out on first Thursdays and other Thursdays. It's every Thursday from May through October. So we look forward to seeing you there. Also, finally, we did continue to work on our placemaking plan. We finalized that. We hired Land Design and FX Fowl, and I believe that Stephanie and Dave, there we go, are in the house. So we designed the plan. We then integrated the brand. We wanted to bring the character of the brand that we created to the streets of Ballston. So we have ideas for that, and now we're going to start implementing those ideas. So what's part of our placemaking plan? Well, of course, there's going to be banners and wayfinding. So we are now looking at ways to integrate the brand that way, maybe do a little twist on that. So again, a little disruptive, and I'm glad that the senator used that word, because that's what happens here. So we will work with the county and see what we can do as far as making Ballston unique in that realm. In addition, we are working on our art program. We have 2 projects in place now at the very, very early stages that we are working with the county, the Arlington County Public Art on. One is with the Metro Canopy, which will, again, very early stage, and we're working on a design for that. And then we also have a series of art incorporating technology that will be deployed throughout Arlington throughout fiscal year 14. So that project is under the works right now. And then we also are beginning work very soon on the medians for Wilson Boulevard and Fairfax Drive. We are finalizing our agreement with the county for us to go ahead and take over the maintenance of those medians, and we will start right away with cleanup and beautification of that. We do have a long-term plan that we're going to continue to work on the county with to implement over the next few years. So that will begin happening as well. And then finally, we have our Wi-Fi hotspots that we've already begun deploying around Ballston, and we will continue to do that as well. Hopefully, the idea is that eventually anywhere in Ballston, you can have free Wi-Fi. I mean, we're a technology center, we're a research and discovery center. It makes sense for us to have free Wi-Fi throughout Ballston. And then the last very cool, important thing, of course, is our mobile application. So that is where our focus will be in the technology realm. We'll continue to work on our website, but everyone here in this area seems to be, it's all mobile. So we want to make sure that if the first interaction you have with Ballston is mobile, it's got to be great, because we want you to come here, we want you to come back. And part of that will be to implement the technology we used with the AR statues as part of our application, and do a virtual ambassador program throughout Ballston. So you can find out information from your phone through a marker that's out there. This is Welborn Square, perhaps. This is what happens here. You know, this is what the events that are going on. This is why Welborn Square is here. So that's kind of the direction that we're headed with our mobile app, as well as just giving general good information about Ballston. So we have a lot more to do, and we're very excited about getting started, that we've started this. And we hope that you'll get involved, and you'll get involved more with what's happening in Ballston. And then we have one last message for you. just gives you an idea of where we're headed. We want to bring inspiration to the street. This is what we're about over the next fiscal year. I want to thank you. I want to invite you to get involved with us too. You're our members, you're our tenants, you're people that are here in the community. We want you to be part of this as well. I mean, this is Ballston is a community. So before we complete everything, I want to thank the amazing staff again, not me, my staff, Allie Kraft, Samantha Baker, Catherine Roper. I did nothing tonight. They just make me look good. I tell you, it's a huge job, but they're incredible. So thank you so much. We also want to thank our board. Our board of directors is amazing, amazing. This is an involved, this board cares. This board is involved. They get with the marketing, with the branding, we make decisions together about where Ballston needs to go. This is an amazing board. They have been so supportive, and we want to thank all of them tonight. In particular, too, I want to thank Karen Jennings, her term is up right now with our board, but we'll see if we can keep her around. She's done amazing work for us in the partnership before, so thank you, Karen. Great job. And I absolutely want to thank Brenda Krieger, our president. I know for sure there couldn't be a better person to have started off this bid on the right foot, and she's been an amazing supporter and advocate for the bid and for us as staff as well. So Brenda, thank you so much for everything. All right, so thank you all very much for coming, and I encourage you to get involved. For those of you who are not bid members who need to stay for the annual meeting, you can go out and enjoy dessert and some more cocktails, and we will see you soon. Thank you so much for being here.